It's Cornwall, and King Mark is waiting to see his bride who is now hopelessly, chemically, and obsessively in love with Tristan. Okay, so needless to say, this doesn't turn out well. But King Mark welcomes them. This is Act 2. King Mark goes out with a hunting party. I'm going to keep the story short. King Mark is gone. King Mark has a faithful servant named Melot. Melot has pretended to be Tristan's friend, but in fact is looking for a chance to betray Tristan. So, Melot knows the signal. Isolde has told Brangæna, once the hunting party is gone, turn off the torches. That will be Tristan's signal to come and be with me. Isolde puts the torch out herself in the end. Tristan comes, they sing a gorgeous half-hour-long love duet. Not all about erotic love, but about philosophy. I mean, they really get to know each other in this. So Isolde and Tristan are just consummating this as Melot brings King Mark back so that he can see everything. King Mark, who feels much more affection to Tristan, his favorite nephew, than he does to Melot, pretty much just throws Melot aside and says, thanks a lot. Meanwhile, he's very serious about saying to Tristan, how could you betray me in this way? You who were my favorite. And Tristan says, I can't explain it in a way that you could possibly understand. But then he says to Isolde, I'm going to have to go, and I want to know if you're willing to follow me wherever I go. Now, of course, Tristan is referring to the realm of death. And the love potion is so strong that Isolde knows that she will follow him even into death. And she says, absolutely, no question. So Melot is infuriated by this. He strikes Tristan, who just drops his sword and lets him do it, because at this point it is in the hands of fate. Third and final act. Tristan is now at his castle in Brittany with his loyal friend and servant Courvenal. Courvenal is attending him, but nothing that anyone can do will make Tristan's wound heal. He hopes that before he dies, Isolde will come to see him. There's a shepherd boy playing a pipe, playing a melancholy, slow pipe melody. And Courvenal says, if you see the ship, play a happy tune so that we know. And just as Tristan is about to go, the shepherd boy plays that tune, and Tristan revives, sings for 20 minutes, and in comes Isolde, just in time to see Tristan die. A second ship comes quickly after Isolde's ship. It's Brangæna, Melot, and King Mark. Brangæna has explained everything to King Mark. King Mark is ready to forgive them because he understands love potions and how you can't really do anything about them. So this is a moment where King Mark, completely forgiving, is ready to unite Tristan and Isolde, but he's too late. Courvenal, in rage, raises his sword against Melot. The two of them struggle for a moment. They kill each other. Tristan says Isolde dies, and Isolde, left alone, remembers her promise to follow Tristan. So she sings one of the most glorious, beautiful pieces of music ever written over Tristan's dead body and dies, going with him. And finally, the musical line, which began 5 hours ago, concludes on a beautiful B major chord, and the opera is finally over. Okay, so Wagner really keeps the suspense and the suspension of any kind of resolution, not theatrical or harmonic, until that last moment. Now, Wagner, as you've already heard, didn't want to do anything the way anyone else had done it, and the same is true of the singers that he requires for his operas. Wagner's operas are like gigantic symphonies, both in length and in size of orchestra, And sometimes the orchestra is the main character, and sometimes the singer is the main character. But the singers, in any case, have to be singers who have the stamina and the strength and the power to project these larger-than-life characters with larger-than-life emotions over a gigantic orchestra. So we're incredibly fortunate today that we have with us Jeanne-Michèle Charbonnet, who has sung the role of Isolde all over the world, and she's going to sing several excerpts from this opera. The first thing we're going to do is you probably remember I told you that this was the motive of the love, and this was the motive of longing, and in between there's a chord. If we put all three of these motives together, we get this sets the stage for the drama. Isolde and Brangäne are on the ship. They are almost to Cornwall. Brangäne says, "There's Cornwall's green shore." And Isolde, in the outburst that you're about to hear, says, "Why did sorceresses demote themselves so that now all we do is create healing potions? Why can't we make the whole ocean rise up, swallow this damn ship and everybody on it, cast them down to the bottom of the ocean where they belong? Oh, how weak I feel now as one of these modern 12th century sorceresses." And so she curses the whole ship and hopes that all of them will go down. So right away, Wagner shows us a character of tremendous power and passion and strength. So Jeanne-Michèle, will you join us, please? I'm going to sing the part of Brangäne.
Yes, my faithful servant.
Erreichen wir sicher das Land, Cornwalls grünen Strand.
Ist heut noch morgen?
Was hör ich, Herren?
Entartet Geschlecht, nun wird der Ahnen. Wohin, Mutter, verkamst du die Macht über Meer und Sturm zu gebieten? O zahme Kunst der Zauberin, die nur Balsam Tränke noch brot. Erwarte mir Welle, schöne Gewalt, herauf aus den Maßen, wo du dich bockst. Hüt meinen wellenzogene Winde, herauf und warte geht es. Zu tobende Sterne fegen den Wirbel, treibt aus dem Schlaf das träumende Meer, fegt aus dem Grund seine drollende Gier, zeigt in den Beine, die ich bete. Zerschlag ist das trotzige Schiff, das verschiedene Triebe verschlags. Und was auf ihm liegt, den wehenden Atem, den los ich euch banden zum Lohn.
Of course, if Beethoven had written this aria, she would have sung Winde zum Lohn, right? And we could have clapped. But in fact, what Wagner does, so that's the technique that I'm talking about, where he doesn't allow you to have any relief from the ongoing tension in the drama. The actual first voice you hear when Tristan and Isolde begins is a sailor who's up in the rigging, and he sings Frisch weht der Wind der Heimat zu. That's his little leitmotif. And you'll hear so Wagner will take that tiny little unit and use it a dozen times, 100 times, 1,000 times. As the harmony changes, as the color changes, you might have noticed, or you might have been just so overwhelmed by the power of her singing, that while Isolde is singing that, the longing motif is playing in the orchestra. In fact, as you hear a Wagner opera, you hear the same motifs over and over, but used in so many different ways. Sometimes one is completely unaware that they're happening, but this is the compositional basis for everything the man wrote. For example, in the second act, I told you they sang a magnificent love duet. It goes something, so stirben wir ungetrennt, ewig einig, ohne End, unerwachen, unerbangen. So this becomes another motif of their love, always rising, becoming more and more impassioned. At another point in the second act, you'll hear a motif that sounds something like this. Hang on. So this will also recur in a very important way later in the opera. But the most recurrent, frequent, over and over motif is this single chord, which, not surprisingly, has been the Tristan chord. It's come to be known as the Tristan chord. What's so special about this chord? What indeed is so special about a lot of these chords is that they are diminished sevenths or half diminished sevenths that do not belong to any particular key. Of course, there are plenty of major and minor chords in Tristan and Isolde and in all of Wagner's operas, but so often he takes us to these chords which, forgive the technical discussion again, very short, because they're built up on minor thirds that don't necessarily lead to a particular place. They are floating chords. They're mercenaries. They can work for any key almost that you want them to work for. So Wagner uses these as part of his technical compositional arsenal to prevent us from feeling that we've settled in a key. If you were taking that wonderful piece that Jeanne-Michèle just sang and sort of analyzing it, you will notice that this is a half diminished seventh where we begin. This is a diminished seventh where we end. All diminished sevenths, so that we never settle. So these diminished sevenths, which are normally only places we pass in traditional classical music to arrive at major or minor chords, become the points of arrival. So even our points of arrival have no home. This is Wagner's restless soul. Now, Wagner's restless soul fell in love with a woman named Mathilde Wesendonck. He was married to Minna Planer, you remember that? And it turned out that Herr Wesendonck was a very wealthy Swiss merchant and a friend of Wagner's. So because they were friends, Wagner assumed that his wife was part of the package. And he and Mathilde Wesendonck had a very intense affair. Mathilde Wesendonck was a poet. She wrote 5 poems that he set to music, and 2 of them actually have music that then figured into Tristan and Isolde. Wagner never said this explicitly, but everyone assumes that Tristan and Isolde was inspired largely because of his love for Mathilde Wesendonck, a love that he couldn't fully consummate. The character of King Mark, as I said, is very sympathetic, and Tristan and King Mark have a lot of affection for each other. This was the parallel to Wagner's life, because Wagner had a lot of affection for Mathilde Wesendonck's husband. And so it wasn't a conflict in Wagner's mind to present this love affair as being inevitable. You know, the potion made me do it, or whatever. And so King Mark, in the end, although it's too late, understands, forgives, and would have united Tristan and Isolde. This didn't happen with the Wesendonck family, but Wagner imagined that it should have. And as I've said, Wagner was a person who believed that what was possible in his imagination should be possible to realize in real life. Often he was frustrated in this. But as an artist, he succeeded completely, even though as a man he was frustrated frequently in that. But I think that the reality is that Wagner created his own rules. And again, Schopenhauer influenced him. Schopenhauer said, talent is when somebody can aim at a target and hit it when other people can't hit the target. Maybe it's far away, maybe, whatever. But he said genius is when the person can hit the target and nobody else can even see the target. And that is what Wagner took as a motto for his own artistic life. He saw a target that wasn't even visible to anybody else, and he not only went after it, but he was able to hit it. He was able to create it. So let's just look at what Wagner can do when he combines these leitmotifs. Somebody tell me where we are in terms of the grand scheme.
Quarter of.
Good, okay. This is the opening of the 3rd act. Tristan is with his friend Courvenal at his castle in Brittany. And as I said, there's a shepherd boy playing a plaintive melody. The shepherd is just playing that little triplet on his pipe. Yup-up-up-bee-da. Wagner, the great orchestrator. Suddenly the celli take this up. Anytime you hear a melodic fragment in Wagner, you're going to hear it again. But you're going to hear it transfigured. You're going to hear it in a way that it has a whole different meaning. Many of you are going to go to the film at the screen. The way to watch and listen to a Wagner opera with its greater-than-life length is to listen to those tiny